he has ways that he can bring money to you and smack you in the face with it that you ain't ever even thought about before. You know, like there's...
All right. So I think that we should talk about what's heavy. You know, because pressure is kind of heavy.
Yeah, I know. It's like we're trying to contrast the peace and the pressure. And so let's talk about the pressures first.
Because you can't have peace unless you acknowledge what feels like pressure. We've
been talking about peace more, so let's explore the pressure side today.
Okay.
And I've been thinking a lot about that. And it's like there's a...
What's keeping you up at night?
Dawn. No, like if you took your worst problem, if you every day, whatever is bothering you the most, if you took that and said, okay, is this going to defeat me, or is possibly this the avenue to one of the greatest breakthroughs of my life? And I think it's a matter of how you look at it. So I've started trying to look at it as, this is an opportunity to challenge, to go through a challenge and to win, let's say, to win that challenge. And then I'm going to have so much more knowledge on the back end.
Yeah, because pressure is actually what I would consider a negative emotion that we face. So what if that negative emotion is an invitation to ask God, well, I'm obviously feeling this way for a reason. What do you want me to know about it? What do you want me to learn from it? Because it's not something he intends to be wasted.
Oh, yeah. That's right down what I think me and you both heard the same speaker at a summit we went to. And Jonathan Vossler Media Group, said something that I guess this will stick with me always. So I don't know if he'll ever see this or not, but I'm giving him a shout out because he hit me like right in the heart, because he's a business owner of a media group kind of like ours. They do a lot of video. There's some similarities, but a lot of differences. But anyway, he was talking about the struggles that he goes through as the CEO, and he was kind of threading it back to money and cash. And if you've owned a business at all in any way, you know that struggle. Like there's always going to be cash flow issues. Sales go up and down, and cash flow goes up and down. And so timing issues is sometimes just one of your biggest problems, and probably always will be if you're going to own a company or be over an organization.
Right.
But he was just talking about how that he got into this chapter in James that's talking about how trials lead to joy. And I forget, I should have looked up that chapter and verse. I literally don't know, but it's in the first part of James because I've read it all my life and read that and like did not sink into me that way.
Yeah.
He was saying he spent months in that because he couldn't figure out how is that supposed to be? What's the reality of that? And it just it wasn't resonating. And so he spent months trying to figure that out. And when it came to how you apply that to your worst problems, one of his main takeaways was that it's important to sit in those problems until you learn the lesson that God wants you to learn. Because if you don't really, really, really learn it deep, you're going to have to come back to it at some point. So the trials do lead to joy because it kind of irons out that problem for forever if you do it right.
Yeah, because especially if you've always looked at trials as something that you need to hurry and try to get out of as quick as you can, because that's what, the world will tell you, like, this is uncomfortable, get out at all costs. And so it's just a different perspective of how to look at what's going on and what looks like a big trial as, oh, I'm trying to learn something from this. God has something for me in this.
Could be the most valuable thing that ever happens to you.
And it always is. And there is joy that is produced in it if you see it that way. Mm-hmm. So give me an example of a trial that you feel like you've been facing or in the middle of, whatever, that you're trying to consider it joy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one that, again, probably a lot of people struggle with this if they're over an organization, but if you have to be concerned about the money of a business or whatever, cash flow at all, anything that has to do with financial. I was sitting one day reading Luke 12, and that's usually when I'm listening to God. It's not even intentionally listening. It's just if I'm reading his word, he's talking to me. Yeah. And I hear things I feel answers to things that I wasn't even asking the question of. But it was just, I was reading Luke 12, and it's talking about how, the basic premise is don't worry about money. Like, do not worship money. Don't worry about money. God's got this. It's like he made examples of flowers, how he takes care of them, birds, how he feeds them. So it don't matter how you look. Like he was comparing that to the flowers. It don't matter. Like, don't have to worry about food. God's going to feed you. He feeds birds. He loves you a lot more than that. So don't worry about money. Well, if you really go down deep in that, for me, that's one of my biggest worries. It always has been since 35 years ago when I started the business, because how you not going to worry about? I mean, like, I got to pay people,
Right.
There's a payroll to be met every 2 weeks. How do you not worry about that? Or how do you not concern yourself with that? So that was something that I was taking Jonathan's advice and be like, okay, I'm going to sit in this, I'm going to like really go deep with that spiritually and be like, God, what do you mean? Like, that seems so contradictory.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to have this one day, so
I know.
you better learn this lesson
I know,
good for me.
I'm tuned in.
So
God, what are you trying to teach him? So I
exactly. That's exactly what it is. So, I think the answer for me, it's going to be different for everybody. I mean, God speaks to everybody differently.
Yeah.
And one of the answers, I guess, or one of the things, because there was several pieces of this answer, but learn to be thankful for what you have, and also trust God. Like, trust God when he says don't worry about money. Put your faith in him in that, because he has ways that he can bring money to you and smack you in the face with it that you ain't ever even thought about before. You know, like, there's lots of times he solves problems for you, or gives you solutions or answers, or brings something really good to the table in a new way that he hasn't done before.
So if you're not going to worry about money, that energy that could be wasted worrying, what if you use that energy to listen to God and hear, like, we are co-creators with Christ. We have the mind of Christ. So he can give us new ideas and new strategies to think about money differently, to think about how we generate revenue differently, like all those things we have access to. And so I guess what I get from that is, instead of spending your time worrying about money, use the energy to be in tune to what God is trying to show you and make you aware of.
Yeah, I mean, use the mental energy to go and do great things. Go chase the kingdom. That's what he says. Like, you can't serve God and money. So go serve God. Whatever that is, looks at to you, whatever you're called to do, whatever your part of the kingdom is, focus on that, and don't focus on the financial part of it. And it kind of takes care of itself.
Well, I think we're coming at this from a very humble place, because we haven't figured this out yet by any means. We're literally, like,
I know the answers, but they ain't happened yet.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, God, I think I'm going to just like learn to trust you. And it's a process. And I love that we can do it in community. And I actually really appreciate that the speaker that we heard at Marketplace Collab last week was willing to talk about the struggle. And that opened my mind to, like, could be we're not the only ones that worry about money as business, but we have an enemy who tries to isolate us and make us feel like we're the only ones. But that's just not the truth. If you go around and ask anybody, whether they own a company, work for a company, everybody has fears and pressures around
there
money.
has to be resources to run that company or organization. And I think the faith part comes in when it's like, when you trust God to resource you, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, he will resource that. If that's what he wants you to be doing in his kingdom, for his kingdom building.
And what that's not is just sitting around thinking like, okay, God, show up. That's not it.
Or it's not having too much.
Right.
He probably ain't going to give you too much, because then you get distracted with money again. It goes all the way to the other side. So the devil can get you either way. Like, if you don't have enough, or if you have too much.
Yeah.
But I think God, wants you in the middle. That's where I do my best work. When I have the resources that I need.
He wants our attention focused on what he wants our attention focused
Yeah.
on. So if it's that you don't have enough money, or if that you have too much, your attention can go either direction.
But either side you find yourself on, and you find it's a problem, whether it's a money problem or whether, no matter what the problem is, whatever your biggest problem is that day,
The heaviest thing.
the heaviest thing you're dealing with, it can be an invitation to a conversation,
Yes.
to dialogue. Okay. In order to do that, we as human beings don't do it very well, but in order to do that, you need to listen. And just in normal conversation, people don't really listen. They're thinking what they're going to say when you're
Talking
finished.
about yourself, right?
Yeah, me, literally. Like, I don't listen good. Like, we can be honest about that, right? But I'm trying. But I know the problem. It's like, so if that's one of my weaknesses, I'm trying to turn that into a strength. Because if I have to force myself, but I'm still not good at just sitting, like just go sit somewhere and listen to God. Like, who does that? I would
Well, you do now.
I would preach it, but I probably wouldn't do it.
Right.
But when I read my Bible, like in the morning when I take time to actually read the Bible, that's when I hear a lot. But here's the beautiful thing that I've discovered is that when I listened a little bit, I actually heard a lot. And then when I started hearing things like, those whispers and that spirit and that kind of like this channel being opened, it just got bigger and bigger. And so now for me, it's like there's this joy of hearing from God.
Because when you really hear, I think all you can feel is love and like, oh man, this was actually never on me. He's actually doing things I'm completely unaware of. And I think everything's going to turn out okay. Like, actually, I know.
Yeah. Well, because if you're thinking from the perspective of that God loves you, like if you're a beloved child of His, then that's number one. You have to come at it from that perspective, or you're coming in a false identity, and He can't talk to you. If you come to God in a false identity, the channel ain't going to be open.
Yeah. And a false identity, like just to give a quick example, as you, whatever that is, pollen.
Go ahead.
An example of a false identity is if you are sitting in fear, guilt, shame, if you're sitting in those things, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to hear from God, who is completely love and cannot be anything other than love, because we're sitting there in a false identity, which is the opposite of what He has for us.
I know, but I'm just saying it's like a stop. It's like a block to hearing truth.
Yeah.
You can't hear truth if you're sitting in false. So if we come to God with that mindset of, He loves me and He wants to give me the answer. So if I just, be cool and shut up and listen, then I'm probably even going to hear it. And then you start hearing things that, wow, that's right. That's a great solution. That's a whole nother innovative strategy to find resources that I never thought of.
We're talking, specifically about the heaviness or pressure around money, but there's also things that happen throughout the day that they might be more on a micro level, like a hard conversation that needs to be had. And the weight of that and worrying about it, and it's taking up energy when what if you were to sit and listen to God on, hey, how do you want me to approach this hard conversation that needs to be had? Like, I guess I'm just saying the possibilities are endless on how to apply what we're learning.
I know, because what I've been trying to say, and it's like the word wavelength comes to mind. When you're on the right wavelength before you approach anybody or before you approach any problem, it just it's like you can hear sometimes words of clarity that just make that hard conversation so much easier if you're coming at it in the right spirit. So like that's what I was trying to, I guess, get to, the constant dialogue of between you and God. And it don't have to be audible, but there's like a spirit dialogue that's taking place all the time. So I don't know, man, like I'm just speaking for me, and people have to experience this for themselves, but I guess I can speak from truth when I say for me that's been transformative, because it's like having a new boundless energy. I have felt that, like an energy, a spirit of just can't wait to see what's next, because a lot of the things that were dragging me back or that causing me worry or problems are just, they don't exist anymore, because I'm going to learn to approach them with the right spirit or from the right perspective of I'm beloved. All I got to do is listen. Like, God has the answers. He wants to tell me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think just knowing you, to me, you've always had this fearless mentality in so many ways. So I do recognize that everybody's in a different place on that journey of trusting God, of learning how to live fearless. Everybody's at different phases in that. So it's actually okay if you're still facing, like if the pressures that you're facing still feel super heavy and it's harder for you to take on peace right now than maybe somebody else that you're seeing. That's okay. Like, God has us all in a different phase of the journey.
Yeah, let's check back tomorrow. See if I still feel this way.
Yeah, really.
No, it's but for me personally, it's been a few months that I have felt like this. It's just like a new life, and which that's cool to have at this age, but feel like a new energy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think a lot of people are going to see that. A lot of people are going to feel that. A lot of people experience that if they just stop for a minute to listen. Like, if you just do it for a minute, it's like it starts multiplying. You know, the channel grows, and it just, the energy that you get from that, like when you start hearing like what you feel like is truth and clarity from God, that's, I mean, there's a lot of peace in that.
Yeah.
You know?
And obviously there's, checks to that in terms of, does it align with God's word?
Right.
Is this something that in community that you can be, that others in your community agree on and can, so it's a check in terms of just feeling like, oh, I'm hearing everything I want to hear. It's not like that.
There's a tension to be managed there because of what you're saying, like, yeah, but what if what you're hearing, is like a crazy person or
what you want to hear versus.
So there has to be checks on that.
Yeah.
Like, first
which
of
is
all,
the truth. Is it the truth?
Do the smart people around me, there's some agreement on that? Because the other side of that is sometimes you have to be innovative and you have to stand up for a new idea, because everybody will doubt it and everybody will say, well, we've never done it like that before. But that's how I feel like a lot of the stories in the Bible, God used new strategies to solve problems that people had been approaching the same way.
And usually the one who he asked to do it, everybody was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. So there's that. And then there's the wisdom of, you really need to check this with wise people. You need to see if it's consistent with what the Bible teaches. What else did you say? The checks and balances? Yeah,
just in community against God's word. And is it truth? Because if you're sitting there in fear, guilt, and shame, what you're going to hear is, nope, that'll never work.
You might hear anything.
Yeah.
Because you ain't hearing it from God. If you're sitting there in the wrong spirit, like, you probably won't.
Yeah, because if you're sitting in fear, well, any new idea that God was going to give you, like, you wouldn't accept it. It would be too crazy. He's like, why does he have such crazy ideas? God, can you just give me like a normal idea? So, moral of the story for today is, whatever's heavy, embrace it.
Embrace it. Get in it, love it, or
find the peace in knowing that it will be okay because you have a God who loves you. Period. Yeah. Right?
I think that's a good way to say it.
I shouldn't say right, because that sounds like I'm looking for you to be like. So don't listen to me, listen to him. Yeah.
So I mean, if that's your way of trying to wrap this up, then that's cool. We can stop talking about it. But I love talking to you about this stuff. But can we just stop talking now?
Yeah. But if somebody's made it to the end of this and they're like, yeah, actually I do have something that's really heavy, what should I go do? I have an idea. They should read Living Fearless by Jamie Winship, which, why don't we just, anybody who sees this and wants a copy, let's just give them a copy.
I got a bunch there at the office, so be happy to share them.
Deal. That's how we're going to end it. If you want a book that was completely transformative for us, we'll give it to
I'd
you.
like one of those. But
Cool.
no, I don't care.
Yeah.
Give them to whoever. But if you want to ask them, like, what do you want people to go do right now?
Yeah.
If you're dwelling in one of your, whatever your largest problem is, and you want answers, go read the Bible and listen.
Or just start
Or a book, or a
very-
podcast, or anything that gives you inspiration or motivation or education. Get into those things and then just kind of listen.
It's as simple as a conversation with God right now. Hey, this is really heavy for me, and I think that you actually care about me, so I'm just going to give this to you. And then from then on, be aware of how he's working.
And I think you want to help me solve this and learn from it and get stronger, and then be smarter on how to move forward and not, and handle in the future. And then maybe even go out and teach others.
Simple.
That'd be cool.
All right. Peace.
Peace out.